Hey guys, GhazzyTV here with a long overdue post. Mentioned this in the community post earlier as well. I had to take a few days off due to my mental health. It tipped over and now we're back, and I hope you guys haven't been waiting for too long for these videos. We're going to go through the new and reworked classical spells and steel skills in Path of Exile Heist, as well as curse skills, as well as the area control spells. We're going to watch the video first. Where this takes us. I get the feeling of like Arc Warden from Dota when I see this bubble. Actually beautiful. I love the visual looks of Flame Wall. Alright, okay. Void Sphere creates an object that generates a pulse. We have talked about Void Sphere in the release as well. I feel like the Void Sphere is like... I'm not sure if I like the Void Sphere. It feels like one of those abilities that is expected to be seen in any ARPG in today's state, but it feels like it's with the cooldown, either the ability would be super overpowered if it was something you could use consistently, but the cooldown is preventing us from using that, and having something that, like second wind for 2 uses, I'm not sure I'll like it. Like for big packs, sure, maybe, but I don't know, it doesn't feel like it fits the kind of meta that is going on in the PoE scene at the moment. However, I do believe that some builds will have some use of it, like the Death's Oath approach would have some use of Void Sphere. It's still going to be a couple of extra links to utilize it, but I'm personally not a big fan of the way they've approached the Void Sphere myself. I feel that it's a bit too many links for the little use it gives or grants the players. As if you're doing clearing, you can't really use Void Sphere as a clearing setup. So if you're playing a build that requires one single target setup and one clearing setup, would you then add another setup for Void Sphere? Not really. Maybe for like a utility for minion builds, I guess, but even so, then I would rather use, I mean, honestly, any of the other ones based on the visual looks. But we know how Flame Wall works, so I would probably rather use Flame Wall if that's in that case myself. Frost Shields, however, creates an icy dome on the ground like Arc Warden in Dota in your location that protects the caster and their allies from enemies. When cast, it rapidly consumes your energy shield at a flat rate, for 1 second, and will grow in power and life based on how much energy shield is drained. The skill provides protection until it runs out of life. Frost Shield will protect you and your allies from a small portion of damage if they're within the shield, or a large portion of their damage if the enemies are outside the shield. All enemies are close to or within the shield will also be chilled. Additionally, while you're inside Frost Shield's dome, it will provide added base critical strike chance. This makes you ready for defensive positioning on bosses, making you take cover within the sphere and unleash hell as long as the shield holds. I mean, this could work extremely well for some of the builds as well. Holy shit. But I like the idea of it. Just like Void Sphere, it works very well with the second wind support, using increased area effect or conk effect support, allow you to control whether you want more space to move within or tighter area. Smaller shield provides you with better control over how many enemies enter the shield's area for maximum damage mitigation. And then we have the Sigil of Power. Creates a potent circle on the ground that grants additional lightning damage to you and allies standing within it, while also slightly increasing the cost of your skills as you spend mana. The skill powers up in stages. Each stage grants more additional lightning damage. Once it's fully powered up, it also causes enemies standing within the circle to deal less damage. The skill offers a way to empower your abilities while facing a difficult boss, providing additional damage when you need it. Its defensive properties can be really beneficial when you're able to keep the boss within the sigil or against the boss that remains in one place. Like the other spells mentioned above, the ability has a long cooldown and can take advantage of second wind, increasing area, blah blah blah. It works alongside with the Archmage support to increase the mana cost, but other spellcast build usually spend enough mana to fully charge up the Sigil. I mean, can you imagine like a Spectre build having both the Frost Shield, Sigil, and a Flame Wall on a linked with the second wind, and you just pop all of them? That's actually going to be pretty goddamn insane. I really like the idea of this, and it works very well for support players as well. But I mean, honestly, all of this would work so well for summoner builds. It's pretty crazy. Flame Wall skills available for early in the game. It creates an area of burning flame, and any enemy that passes through it will be inflicted by a secondary burning effect. This means that you can place a flame wall between you and your enemies to watch them melt as they try to reach you. Any projectile fired through the wall will have fire damage added to projectiles. These flame projectiles will apply the wall's secondary burning effect to enemies they hit as well. And the skill can be deployed to boost damage of any projectile skill without any additional support, or can be supported with burning damage to specialize in its damage over time property. You can spread the burning effect yourself with any projectile skill, use projectile firing minions, or have party members spread the effect. You can have up to 3 flames active at once, so you can create multiple fire fields in a row with a spell cascade support, or a wide defensive barrier with awakened spell cascade. Check out these skills in the link below. Okay, so we've seen the action of it. Like the only thing I feel is like, this seems pretty crazy. This, I really like the idea of this. But the fact that you get a base crit from the Frost Shield is actually fucking crazy. And then this, all of these would work so well for minions. But I am very curious to see how the Crackling Lance and the Blazing Salvo builds will be, or the abilities will look, to see what we can do with them. So I'm really hyped about that. But honestly, these are all just screaming support than the minion builds, because you can utilize all 3 of them. It doesn't seem to me that they are gated of sharing cooldown, unless they make them have a specific tag, such as guard skills, where you can only use 1 guard abilities. But I doubt that, since this one has 3 charges, for example. And you can increase charges with second wind. I'm not sure. We'll see, though. If I think the minions will get the base crit, I'm pretty sure it will be. If you look at the wording, it says, while you're inside the Frost Shield, it will provide added base critical strike chance, but it seems to be an icy dome on the ground that protects the caster and their allies from enemies. So it seems to be a buff that generically applies to everyone inside of it that is an ally, so that's minions and party members. So we'll have a look at that when the skill is actually revealed on, I believe it's Wednesday or Thursday, that will be the case. And then we have the curse skill, so let's have a look at this one as well. Not sure I like the punishment, but it's like it kind of replaces, or it's like another option to explode each chest, I guess. You missed the rare, sir. You let the rare live. God damn it. You're fresh today, sir. How are you feeling? Mike, I'm doing alright, man. Thank you. How are you doing? An overview of curses. Curses are among the first skills that were introduced in Path of Exile over time. We've introduced a number of ways to take advantage of their mechanics, like the blasphemy support with a greater that creates a curse aura. We're adding the ability to curses with cursed hit support. While having a number of methods to apply curses is certainly a good thing, there's a lot of automatic cursing going on, and we wanted to give some incentive to those who wanted to take the time to actually cast the curse manually on a pack of monsters. And while we're doing this, it felt like a good opportunity to review all curse gems and see what other improvements could be made. We were going to see if we could add any new curses to the pool, but I found that the current set of curses already covers pretty much every niche we wanted. However, this didn't stop us from making the other gems that would interact with them in some way. To this end, we've added one new skill gem and one new support gem, reworked a number of curse skills, and improved their visual effects. Let's have a look at this. So curses are now divided into hexes and marks. We've tried to make them feel distinct while sharing some identifiable properties of being a curse. So Hex spells apply curse debuffs to each enemy in an area. If the spell was self-cast, the debuff will gain Doom over time to its, up to its maximum. The effect of the curse is increased by the amount of Doom it has. So basically, the curse is amplified in terms of effect as it scales upwards. And the curses that are now considered hexes are flammability, frostbite, connectivity, elemental weakness, vulnerability, despair, terrible shades, and feeble punishments. Marks apply the curse debuff on a single target and cannot be applied to more than one target. We created a new passive skill that applies specifically to marks and marked enemies. We're aiming to move marks towards being more dexterity aligned as a mechanic, so their passives will be close to the ranger area of the passive tree. Curses that are considered marks are Warlord's Mark, Poacher's, and Assassin's Mark, and Sniper's Mark, which is the rework projectile weakness. Oh. So these can, okay, so charge generating passively through curses seems to be, oh, well, this is interesting. Impending Doom and Doom Blast. Impending Doom is a support of the can support hexes. When the supported hex expires or is removed in any way, it triggers Doom Blast, which causes explosion. The more Doom the supported hex is built up before its expiration, the greater damage the explosion will deal.
Welcome to the crew.
Sublimical, thanks so much for the Prime Sub, appreciate it, dude. There are a number of ways to cause explosions to occur. At the most basic level, you can simply kill a monster with a supported hex. However, there are many other ways you can cause a hex to expire, but that's an exercise that we'll leave up to you to figure out. Hex Blast. This is a new skill that calls down a beam of chaos on damage on the target. If the target is cursed with a hex, it consumes that hex and causes a shockwave around that enemy, similar to Impending Doom. The more Doom the supported hex built up, the greater damage the skill deals. Although Hex Blast is a chaos damage spell, it has some elemental themed properties that makes it special. For one, the damage it deals has the ability to ignite shock for free. Secondly, that it deals damage based on the lowest resistance the enemy has. For example, this lets you use an offensive hex such as flammability and still make use of the fire rest reduction that it provides. Punishment has now changed to provide benefit for a greater variety of builds. It no longer causes you to gain bonus when monsters hit you, but instead curses enemies to take increased fist damage when they're on low life, and this synergizes with the second effect that punishment now applies, which causes monsters to explode, dealing a percentage of your overkill damage to monsters around them. In addition, if cursed enemy monsters hit you, they get debilitated, a debuff that causes enemies to deal less damage and less movement speed for a duration. These changes make punishment much more useful and more well-rounded curse. Well, I have to agree with that. With most of the offensive capabilities as well as defensive component to it, in case monsters are able to get close to you. I guess it does have a better, well-rounded curse compared to what it did before. Sniper's Mark is not revealed yet. Existing marks, all mark curses have been rebalanced to be more suitable for single target. In addition, the curse penalty that is found on many bosses of the enemy no longer applies to marks, but only applies to hexes. Oh, fuck me. What the fuck? Okay. So we can actually skyrocket single target DPS then? What was it? 60% curse effectiveness or something? No longer applies to marks, and they're buffing the mark to be more suitable for only having one target. So finally we're in a situation, 66% even. So we're finally in a situation where cursing a boss is actually worth doing. Like, usually curses are like the extra thing you throw in later because of the curse effect reduction, and so you don't really care about curses before a boss unless you're using the curses to regenerate charges, for example, which a lot of people do with Assassin's Mark, for example, to get power charges. So that'll be very interesting to see how this changes the entire design of a lot of builds. This will be very fun to see. I love the fact that they're taking away the curse effect reduction from bosses. Other small changes, we've also made some small changes to radius values, bonuses that a certain curses give some additional quality stats. You'll find these changes outlined in the patch notes. In addition to these changes, there will be some passive tree adjustments and new keystone that changes how self-cast curse applies to their debuffs. Also, I do believe I heard people saying that Bane would not apply the Impending Doom approach, right? So that Bane doesn't get this passive value. I'm not sure about the Doom Blast, but I do believe that with this pretty much allows us to do a build that is only cursing. You're doing damage by cursing enemies. So I like the idea of it, because if you can scale like spell damage or generic damages that would also scale the chaos, then you should be in a position where you can use curses like elemental weakness and then, for example, frostbite to do a cold damaged approach Doom Blast. bringing the resistance down a lot. I like the idea of it, but we'll see how it feels. Plus, you have the Impending Doom approach. And if you then add more curses, you could, you know, add perhaps a punishment to then get the explosions. I'm not sure, though. I mean, this is a very interesting change to the game and how it works. The biggest concern I have is actually how the mark changes will change the approach of getting charges for some builds. There are builds that are using Assassin Mark specifically. A lot of spell builds are using Assassin Mark to avoid using Power Charge on crit on a secondary setup. This might actually force us into a position where we have to use it. Unless, of course, we still go with the Assassin Mark on hit rings, and the hits you do with multiple projectiles would still occur as every enemy that you actually hit, right? Because that's basically what you do. You curse on hit, but you don't get that AoE approach to it. So I'm not sure how much it will change, but it will be very interesting either way. I actually like this, the curse skill changes. We're going to have to make a build with this one way or another. It's going to happen. There's going to be so many new builds coming up in 3.12, boys. New and rework classic spells and steal skills in Path of Exile. Now, I'm not a big fan of steal skills, but I am very, very keen to see what they're going to do with Blazing Salvo. Blazing Salvo releases a torrent of fiery mortars that can hit enemies as they fly and land in rapid succession. With each mortar causing an explosion when targeting up close, the explosion can hit the target multiple times, so GMP should be fucking solid. While targeting at range causes them to spread out and have a higher explosion radius, giving you wide damage spread. The skill rewards clever positioning, making it well suited for casting by hand or by being careful about placement of torment traps and mines. The problem with this right now is that I do believe that in this situation that it would basically be the next mine ability, because of the overlapping shotgun effects that you can generate, and mine's just so good with these type of abilities. Multiple projectile support results in more damage up close and more reliable area spread, while Fork lets the mortar split into two if they hit enemies, with each exploding separately. Combining the skill with Void Sphere to draw enemies in for... Stop with the Void Sphere. Or use Flame Bolt to add a fire Blazing Salvo will apply the Flame Bolt's burning effect to enemies and hit. I love the Flame Bolt approach, actually. Crackling Lance shoots out a wide beam of lightning that has a secondary area of lightning that splits off it, striking enemies in a wide spread. Crackling Lance comes with a built-in intensity, so each cast builds in damage with the secondary areas angled in. Sorry, until all the lightning fires in a single wider beam. The skill is powerful single target damage capacity when handcast, while having a reliable area coverage when used with triggers, totems, traps, or binds. This damage bonus is multiplicative with the intensity support, allowing you to build up incredible single target damage. Its high damage is great for creating very powerful shocks on enemies. I love the idea of this. I wonder if Enki is going to do a Crackling Lance instead of Arc now. Perhaps it's time to move on, Enki. Intensity and the Pinpoint Support. Pinpoint? Intensity was introduced as a high-risk, high-reward mechanic for handcasting that lets you build up powerful, concentrated damage while casting repeatedly, as long as you don't move and at the cost of area effect. To improve the mechanic, we're lowering the base maximum intensity to 3 while increasing all bonuses to compensate. This will make it faster to build up and lose intensity, while also putting more power on the passive tree notable that gives maximum intensity. We changed the intensity mechanic to be one we can build into other skills and supports, like Crackling Lance and the new Pinpoint Support. Pinpoint Support gives 3 additional projectiles, while each stack of intensity will reduce the number of projectiles you fire by 1, while greatly increasing the skill's damage. By increasing your maximum intensity, you could lose all projectiles, so the support works well with spells that can easily gain additional projectiles. This is interesting. I like this a lot. Firestorm, a classical Path of Exile spell. Firestorm has been reworked to give you more powerful visuals, more reliable area coverage, to greater reward for casting fewer, more powerful Firestorms. It is now a level 28 skill instead of level 12. Firestorm now calls down a single powerful meteor followed by a smaller ongoing storm of fire over a duration. Now there's a limit on how many ongoing storms can be activated. So you can call down as many meteors as you'd like, but can't stack up ongoing firestorms by extending their duration and triggering or casting the skills rapidly. This has allowed us to greatly increase the area of each impact and the overall damage per cast and improve performances. I wonder if they're doing the same with the Ice Stormers right there. Ice Storm skill granted Whispering Ice as receive visual overall modernized to the skill, while also receiving some balance. It has a storm limit like Firestorm, though the limit is much higher than Firestorm, so they didn't do much more than limited. It works better with triggering a rapid cast mechanics. Impact of area effect and damage have been increased, while the impact frequency has been lowered. Discharge is another long-standing path effective skill that hasn't received much balanced attention due to how dependent it has been on specific mechanics that can very rapidly generate charges, forcing the balance to be focused on a small handful of unique items that can generate huge numbers of charges as quickly as you can use the skill to make the skill more accessible. Discharge base damage has been almost tripled, and its area of effect now scales significantly with the number of charges consumed, but had been given a short cooldown. This makes keeping up with the charge generation much more manageable for a wider selection of builds. Its damage penalty when triggered has been replaced by a damage penalty to ailments, so you can now create very devastating ignite. I'm not sure I like this with a cooldown on it. To preserve the classic trigger discharge playstyle, a new threshold jewel called Endless Misery has been added, which sets a cooldown discharge to a much lower value, but also comes with a penalty to its damage and area effect, bringing it closer to those superior in many setups the previous iteration of discharge. It has also received a visual overhaul, bringing it on par with modern skill effects and improved in performance. Wasn't there a video we haven't looked at? Let's have a look at it. I mean, look at how beautiful the Glacial Salvo looks. Imagine putting that on like 20 vines. Unlimited power! Pinpoint on Frostbolt. Interesting. It looks beautiful though. Level up, sir. GC looks beautiful. I'm not sure how I feel about the lancing steel, the shattering steel. I don't know, I've never really been a big fan of the steel abilities. I do like the way the clearing looks like splitting steel though. It's like... not sure. Not sure how I feel about that. Glacial Cascade now has additional mechanic that provides a unique playstyle that rewards clever positioning. The skill now has an inherent knockback and fixed cascade spread, and the final burst of the Glacial Cascade deals significantly more damage in a larger area. Use the knockback from the cascade to push enemies away into the large impact. This is similar to what happened in the race that me and Brittle Knee were casting yesterday, where the cascade effect from one of the ads during the Kitava fight has an explosion effect at the end of the cascade, and that explosion is something that has killed more hardcore players than people would like to admit. So I think that this is a really cool way to actually make the player-based cascade have the same effect. And position the skill carefully on bosses to make the most out of the damage overlap. The skill deals significant damage with traps and mines, but can now take much more advantage of the deliberate positioning the totems and hand casting allows. The skill benefits greatly from increased air effect, allowing for more overlap between bursts. We've also changed the skill to convert 100% of its physical to cold, so no enchantments or threshold jewels is required to fully convert the skill. We're replacing the enchantment or disabling the long winter threshold jewel from dropping to be reintroduced in a new form later. Yeah, I've seen the chat saying, and Volvo mentioned that they didn't actually show the discharge in the video. It's true. Splitting Steel is now a new low-level skill that uses the shard mechanic. Each use fire a single shard explodes into additional projectiles when it hits an enemy or reaches the target location, creating a smaller shard that flies towards nearby enemies before detonating in a smaller explosion. The skill has some added fists and a chance to impale, something that wasn't previously accessible at such low levels. Changes have been made to the split mechanic that means splitting now occurs before other projectiles' behaviors. This means that fork pierced chain would take place after split as generate all of the additional projectiles, opening up all sorts of interesting ways to take advantage of these mechanics. Interesting. Call of Steel is a secondary skill granted as long as you have any of the skill gems equipped. It lets you detonate all impales on enemies in a very large range, causing them to deal their stored impale damage in a small area around them. This includes any dead enemies whose corpses are impaled. Call of Steel also generates charges that can be used by any of the steel skills, generating one of each impaled enemy in range, as well as 4 shards when first used. Then another 4 every half a second until you're at a maximum of 12 shards. Using a steel skill will interrupt this ongoing recharge, so it's best time you use this when you'll be performing other actions if you don't have enough impaled enemies nearby. I am not sure I like this. And there was a cast time of it as well. Shattering Steel has received some changes to make the skill more flexible at the cost of consuming 2 shards. Shattering Steel projectile can no longer hit the same target multiple times, but instead deal much more damage up close when consuming shards. The skill now has 4 additional projectiles from 2, and projectile distances is now more reliably modified by projectile speed. Projectiles still explode in a cone area when they stop, and these areas can hit a target multiple times if you can get them to overlap. The skill now grants a buff that gives a chance to block whenever you use it while consuming a shard. You can have up to 6 of these buffs that grant block chance, each with its own duration, so you get to keep using the skill frequently to keep the bonus active. These gives the sizable defensive advantage to keep you alive when getting up close for those deadly close range shots. Lancing Steel has been completely reworked. Using the attack now consumes 4 shards, creating a whirling cluster of shards pointing forward, and the cluster rapidly fires out its projectiles, aiming towards enemies in front at a great range or enemies in a direction close to the cluster. The projectiles target enemies the cluster that hasn't hit first, letting the cluster pick off weaker enemies before focusing on the remaining targets. The projectiles deals more damage to targets that haven't yet been hit by each cluster of shards to make the skill much more effective at taking out a very large group of enemies that are spread out. Additional projectiles add to the total number of projectiles each cluster fires, with 50% more projectiles fired for each shard consumed. This means that the skill usually fires 3 times its number of projectiles at a fixed rate, creating a hail of shards that deal a devastating salvo of damage. Especially when combined with the impale effect, you can have multiple clusters active at once, limited only by how fast you can generate shards. Because of the high shard cost, you'll likely want to invest in a chance to impale, so that you got more shards in enemies to draw out with Call of Steel. I don't like this approach where you have to use Call of Steel to recharge the shards in this. This is my biggest issue with this. The Glacial Cascade, I love the changes to that. Discharge, we'll see. Firestorm looks fucking sexy, boys. I love the intensity and pinpoint support. It's going to be very interesting to see if you can utilize abilities that are strictly being used for clearing, like Frostbolt, for example. Maybe even Power Siphon, I'm not sure. Where you're in a situation where you're generating, unless Pinpoint is a spell support, like where you're using ability that is easily getting a lot of extra projectiles, like Frostbolt from the Threshold Jewel, for example, where you're able to drop the projectiles down through Pinpoint and do a significantly more damage together with intensity. I'm not sure how this will work, though. It's going to be very interesting to see what their plan is when it comes to being able to make a clearing or a generic clearing ability into an actually viable single target. So I'm very, very keen to see how this works out. Crackling Lance and Blazing Salvo. Mama. Holy mama. There will be some builds made by these, I can tell you this much. I'm actually maybe starting as Blazing Salvo. We'll see about the patch notes. And I do believe that was all the things I missed since I was gone a few days ago. Guys, hit me up in the comments below what you guys feel about these reworks and these new skills that we've been looking at, and I'll be sure to read all the comments. And I will be back with more videos during the coming week. I will be updating all my build guides live on stream when the patch notes hit. We're going to make new builds, we're going to make PUBs, I'm going to update everything, and then I will make build reviews for the community in the my stream before the league releases. So till next time, boys, stay safe and keep rocking.